Today's episode is brought to you by Crescent Plumbing Supply. Master bath feeling more like a porta potty thanks to all those kids? Kitchen sink becoming just simply unbearable? Go to crescentplumbingsupply.com for some inspiration, then pop into their amazing showroom to get those makeovers moving. Mention Soccer Dad Pod and receive a discount on your purchase. You're welcome. Today's guest is Keith Tozer, MISL alum, National Futsal Team Head Coach, and current co-chair of the MASL. He's been busy in this game that we all love. With some incredible stories that include the most famous trade in Steamer's history, Keith informs and entertains in this episode. Be sure to check out the liner notes for a link to the Open Combine coming up in San Diego for the league. Still got it? Go take your shot. Let's go. What's up, everybody? Soccer Dad Pod time. We just keep them coming. Keep them coming. We've got, I'm going to lead us in here today. As you all know, I love the tunes. I spend my days thinking about what I'm going to play for these episodes. And today was an easy one because me and middleman, my middle, Beckett, we're going to go down to Old Rock House, downtown St. Louis. So we're going to check out this artist by the name of Evan Honer, Honer. For those of you that are my age or above or anywhere close to my age, trust me, the kids like this guy. So just check him out. And for those of you that are in the St. Louis area, you're looking for a night out, check out Old Rock House. Go to their website. Tons of shows coming down the pipe. Get out, go do something. Pick a hotel, go see some rock and roll. Plenty of things to do. I want to send a quick shout out to Crescent Plumbing Supply as well for all the support for the show. 6614 Olive. Go check out the new showroom. It's massive. Tons of displays, options. Give that master suite some sweet love, and it's renovation time because your kids they're kind of in that middle age, and as soon as they pop out the door, then you get it all back. So fix it before they're gone. Soccer Dad Pod, last couple episodes we've been just kind of rolling out the heavy hitters, none more so than our last episode. We were really honored and privileged to be able to sit down and chat with Mr. Jim Cavanaugh of Worldwide Tech, St. Louis City, and SLU and STLFC fame, and on and on and on. Just an incredible individual, incredibly successful, laying out his own path, experiences and vision, moving forward as well, not only for St. Louis City, the team, but really U.S. soccer in general. So, we talked a lot about where things are at, but we leaned into the World Cup as well, kind of what he sees as the potential effect for the World Cup, the growth, and what it might mean for not only MLS, but soccer in general. So go check that one out. And then, the freebie stuff, the free give back, it's always nice to take, but it's better to give. And we continue to give you these episodes. And in return, all we ask is a little like, review, follow, share. They're free. And it really, really helps. It helps us grow the show. And when we send out blind requests on social media, because that's the name of the game these days, every now and then these people take a look at who we've talked to and they're like, you know what? I think I might join. Hence our guest today. I've got Keith Tozer from MASL, president of MASL, long lineage of soccer in his blood here. Keith, thanks for joining me, man. Really appreciate you taking the time.
No, it's great to be on, JB.
So I did a little bit of homework here with my two friends out and about, running their kids all over the soccer all over the St. Louis metro area. Usually they help me fill in the gaps, and today I had to do a little bit of reading so I can kind of fill in my own gaps. And when I pulled up the profile, it's like, where do we start? Because your whole life, it appears, has involved this little round ball that we all love. So let's just start early days. You're a New York guy, huh?
I'm a New Yorker, yeah. Grew up in Clifton Park, New York, which is a little north of the city. I did start playing soccer, however, in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Really?
My mom and dad, my parents moved down there, I think like 7th and 8th grade. And my older brother, one of my older brothers, brought home a soccer ball. I was a running back, quarterback, second baseman, center in hockey, and just started kicking the ball around and kind of fell in love with it.
So was soccer in the family at all, or were you kind of the first one introduced to it? And what were the early days like from a club perspective, high school? Because you jumped into the pro ranks right out of school. So let's talk about that early transition.
Yeah, I never played club. Like I said, I started playing soccer when I was like 13 years old. I went out from a high school team freshman. I was the leading goal scorer. I led my team in scoring every year at Shenandoah in Clifton Park. Halfway through my senior year in high school, a guy named Francisco Marcos, who everybody knows, U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame and, been a big part of U.S. Soccer, invited me to play in Oneonta 74 at Hartwick College, which was an international tournament. I went and played for the U.S., fell in love with Oneonta, fell in love with Hartwick, couldn't get in. So Gar Stan was the coach of Oneonta State across the street. And Farouk Qureshi, who was the Herman Trophy winner for Oneonta, was there. And then you had Muchi Marnik and Billy Kazonis, also Herman Trophy for Hartwick. I ended up playing at State. And halfway through my senior year, I got asked to try out for the U.S. Olympic program. And one thing led to another. Next thing, I was drafted into the Major Indoor Soccer League halfway through my senior year. And I guess the rest is history.
So what year were you drafted? What was your first year pro?
My first year was 1978. Drafted by the Cincinnati Kids. Pete Rose, who just passed away, owned the team. And actually, Jippy, I was getting ready to go into the NASL because the scouts from the Washington Diplomats came and had a conversation with me on Oneonta and said, hey, we really want to draft you in January in the NASL. Well, Keith Van Aaron, who was the goalkeeper at Hartwick College, he called me early November and said, I just got drafted to the MISL. And I thought he was at some bar drinking. I'm like, well, what the heck is the MISL?
Right.
And next thing you know, I got a call from Ruben Katz, who was Pete Rose's lawyer, and another guy, Barry Mandel, I believe. They called me, gave me a contract. So then I called the scouts from the Diplomats, because I was all excited. Poor college kid who's got money in his pocket. I'm going to be playing professional soccer 3 or 4 or 5 months prior to going to the NASL. And I said, hey, I got great news. I'm going to be playing indoor soccer. I'll be ready for your draft. And then they said, no, we don't want you to go. And I said, why is that? And they said, we don't want you to play indoor. And I said, okay, I won't play indoor if you guarantee me, A, you're going to draft me, and B, you're going to sign me to a contract. And they said, no, we can't do that.
Yeah.
So I didn't turn down the money or the opportunity. And guys like Doc Lawson, Ty Keogh from St. Louis, just to name a few of the guys, we all went indoor and got blackballed for a period of time. But that was my start of my career.
Yeah. So we've talked to a number of individuals that are kind of the same generation that, were really thriving kind of in those peak years, the late teens, early 20s, you're ready to roll. You want to be a pro player. But here in America, with the direction that NASL was going, there really was almost like an immediate roadblock, a dead end for a lot of them. Maybe because indoor, they just didn't understand it, or maybe it wasn't near enough to their market, or they weren't, close to somebody that was within a team. And then there were those that were like, just frustrated with the fact that they didn't have options. But you were part of the early years of the league. And, I growing up here in St. Louis, going to the Checker Dome, the old barn, and watching the Steamers in, the early 80s, it was really all we knew, because as kids, there was no pro soccer here because the NASL was like we weren't around, and obviously MLS is a number of years later. So talk about your own personal feelings, and were you enthusiastic about the indoor path? Were you a little frustrated? Were you, did you just not know what to expect? How did you accept it? Because you ended up playing for a number of years, close to 10 really, indoor. So something stuck with you.
Well, had all those kind of feelings. I used to go to the Meadowlands with my girlfriend at that time and watch the New York Cosmos. And I loved the Cosmos, right? And Shep Messing was the goalkeeper for them, and along with Hubert Birkenmeyer and a couple other guys. And next thing you know, on December 22nd, 1978, there I am in Nassau Coliseum. I got Pete Rose as my owner. I got Shep Messing on the other team, and I'm playing against them. Yeah. And I'm playing in indoor soccer. And remember, I did play hockey, so I kind of feel comfortable inside this rink, even though it's an AstroTurf with the soccer ball. And that night was just electrifying. Fell in love with the game. The game took off, and I was being paid. Yeah. So to me, it was like so cool. But what happened is that we had that season. Then I played for the Pennsylvania Stoners of the American Soccer League during the summer with guys like Matt Barr, who played for a month and a half and went on to the National Football League to kick, and Florian Kemp, who went to Houston and kick, Jeff Tipping, who became a big player with United Soccer Coaches. And then I told my parents at the time that I would go back to college to get my degree. Remember, I left halfway through my senior year to turn pro. So I actually went back to Oneonta. I helped my coach the team as an assistant. And then come December, when I finally got my degree, which was so key later on in life, I tried to get back in indoor. And at that time, indoor just started, and everybody said, "Oh, sorry, we were full." So that was a whole nother story that I had to try to figure out. Well, wait a minute. I was the number one pick in the entire draft. I did all these other things, and all of a sudden, there's no room for me. It was like, okay, what am I going to do now?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, when you look back at the history of the MISL in particular, it smashed between the exit of NASL and the entry of MLS. You saw this accordion effect of popularity, not only, amongst the general population and who's going to games, but you also saw certain franchises like 2, 3, 4 year great run. And the next thing you know, they're gone. They can't meet payroll or whatever it is. There was this huge flux. Well, I'm kind of asking you a current question in regards to what you experienced. How crazy was that time frame, and how are you kind of looking at your league today in an attempt to try and, decrease the ebbs and the flows and the chaos within these markets?
Well, I think everything starts at the top. And it really doesn't matter what industry or what company you're in. Mm-hmm. Everything starts at the top. At that time, you had the Barlow family, who owned the 49ers and the Penguins, had the Pittsburgh Spirit. You had the Buss family, who owned the LA Kings and the LA Lakers, and they had the LA Lasers. You had other high-profile, high-wealth people own indoor teams, mm-hmm. right? And I think that really helped the sport. Spring forward to Major League Soccer, and you have guys like a guest you just had on, who I drafted with the LA Lasers, Jimmy Cavanaugh. I mean, high wealth people. You have other people in Major League Soccer that have big names, mm-hmm. And high wealth. And I think in order to be successful, you need to do that. Kudos to Anschutz, kudos to Hunt, for those guys that owned multiple teams early on, and kept the sport going. And then you had got a guy named Don Garber, who was in my class at Oneonta. So there's a trivia question. Two commissioners, same year, same college, except he went left to the NFL and I went right to the MISL. He has done a remarkable job with the people that are involved with it. That's what we need. We're one major player away from taking a huge step. We have great owners right now. It's been great with Shep Messing, and it's kind of weird that I first idolized him as a player. I played against him. Now he's the chairman. I'm commissioner, and JP Del Camera is the president of the league, president of media. It's pretty wild that we're in here, but we're one step away, JP. If we could get a Taylor Swift, if we could get a Kavanaugh, if we could get someone high wealth, big name, I think that will take us over the top.
Well, I'm pretty sure there's a guy down in Dallas who just sold 75% of his share of the Mavericks that is pretty crazy, and one of those multi-Bs. I'm a huge fan of Mr. Cuban, so that what you're describing, that seems like a no-brainer to me. But anyway, I'm Peanut Gallery here in St. Louis.
Well, he does. I am a partner with him. Years ago, prior to the COVID, we wanted to start the PFL, which was the Professional Futsal League. So yep. Donnie Nelson, who was the president at that time, a guy named Michael Hitchcock, who, I don't know, he owns like 7 outdoor teams, Brian Dick, myself, and then Mark came in. We started, try to get the PFL off the ground. It started going well, but we really couldn't get over the hurdle. But he loves indoors, so hopefully maybe he can do it.
So this being a St. Louis-based show, I would be remiss if I didn't take you back into the 80s. You alluded to it, and we talked a little bit of it pre-recording here. You were responsible for bringing Mr. Kavanaugh to L.A., but then soon after that, there was a trade that was made. And in the world of St. Louis Steamers lore, that trade was the biggest trade in franchise history for a number of reasons. But talk about your own perception of, you had Jim Kavanaugh out in LA on the West Coast. Mr. Buss and the Steamers ownership were working a little deal behind the curtain. And next thing you know, within 48 hours, you're taking 2 St. Louis legends in Steve Petcher and Don Ebert, and you're sending a soon-to-be legend in his own world, Jim Kavanaugh, back to St. Louis. Talk about that trade.
Yeah, when I first took over Los Angeles, I was only 27 at the time, and been a player coach and whatever, and I gave the whole team 30 days. So we met in Sepulveda at a hotel by LAX. The whole team came in, and I said, guys, you know what? Everybody's got a clean slate. I'm going to give you 30 days. We're going to tackle the physical, the mental, the technical, and the tactical. We're going to not have any ideas about where you are and where you're going. I'm giving everybody a clean slate. After 30 days, I'll make a decision. After 30 days, I had to start making some changes. Actually, some people were calling me like Monty Hall, if you remember from Let's Make a Deal.
Let's Make a Deal.
I think as you build teams, you got to build teams, from the middle all the way up to the top, right? So goalkeeper, defenders, central midfielders, attackers. So Petch, at that time was considered a big, rough, rugged, very good indoor defender. And we didn't have a real big target and someone who could score goals, and that fit Ebert. So then obviously to get talent, you have to get rid of talent. I also took Paulie Garcia, who was a big player for the LA Lasers. Right. And then, there's Jimmy Kavanaugh, a young guy, great college career, great high school career in St. Louis. I did not want to give up because I wasn't there just for, I signed a half a year and another year. My idea, Jimmy, I was there for 10 years, right? Yeah. And I didn't want to sell the future of the franchise. But as you know, in sports, you got to win today.
Right.
So I had to make a decision, pull the trigger. So, Mark Frederickson was kind of part of that new wave, and I got Daryl Duran from St. Louis. And so that was a big trade for us. Unfortunately, Don got hurt a little bit. Petch, they both did a fantastic job. And really, it was a culture shift. I think in order to rebuild a company or rebuild a sports team, you got to have a culture shift. And those two guys brought a different culture, hardworking, goal-orientated, blue collar. I mean, they had all the qualities that I loved, that we needed. And they were the start of that culture shift.
So let me ask you a little bit more about that whole St. Louis culture generically. You saw it manifested in these two, but you also were in the league for a long time, and you came through St. Louis a number of times inevitably and played at the old Checker Dome, at the barn. We were here at that time. I think it was the 82 season, something like that. We're averaging 19,000, coming into an indoor soccer game. We were outdrawing the St. Louis Blues consistently during those years. I had Chet Messing on this show a little over a year ago, and he was very quick to recollect and talk about his own experience within the league and playing in that stadium during those years, that it was a rock show every time. What was your experience as you recall coming through the Midwest and playing the Steamers during the heyday?
Yeah, I used to love to come and play against the Steamers as a player. It was such a magical moment to step into the Checker Dome and have 18,000 people, and they're all booing you. And you look down and you see all these unbelievable players, Slobo and Daryl and Don and Steve, and the list can go on and on. It was great. I mean, and we all felt like, oh my gosh, that indoor soccer, the major indoor soccer league, the sport of professional indoor soccer is just going to be fantastic. It was great. And then I became a coach, and I coached in the longest game in the history of indoor soccer at the Checker Dome, 18,000 people, LA Lasers versus the Steamers, obviously. And Charlie Valzone scores in the fourth overtime. I mean, it had to be like 11 o'clock. I was into my second goalkeeper. So I had David Bursick play the first 6 quarters, who obviously is a St. Louis guy, right?
Another St. Louis guy.
And by the way, who did he play for? New York Cosmos, right?
Right.
My next goalkeeper was Hubert Birkenmeyer, who played for the New York Cosmos. I was down to 3 defenders. I had to go to the bathroom really bad, but at that time there was no gate behind the bench, so I could run out. And that game was just up and down, and people never sat down. It was just a crazy time, and I loved St. Louis, and as we all know, everybody looked at St. Louis as Soccer USA, Soccer Town USA. So to go there and play against the Steamers, to play against the legends, great coaches. It was a magical time, actually.
Well, let me ask a little fun question along those lines, because you've got a little bit of that, half of the other city across on the other side of the state in your resume, that being Kansas City. I'm sure you saw it. We rolled into MLS last year, season 1, and out of the gate, we were seeking a rival. We forced it upon Kansas City for obvious reasons, and their front office. I'm just going to kind of summarize this really quickly. There was a local podcast called the Soccer Capital Podcast. There was a cease and desist order sent from the Sporting KC attorneys, basically claiming that's our title. I just want to get your take on the ludicrousness of that story.
Wow, you really
I have to. I mean, that's my job. I'm feeding my people what they want to hear. Here at SDP, we have had a blast capturing and retelling these stories, and we'll be adding more content for the next generation of players and parents coming soon. Recruiters, college coaches, scouts, and more. So please be sure to give us a review on Apple or Spotify and help spread the word. Without your support, we'd still be doing it, but it's way more fun knowing people are listening. Back to the show.
I think it first was only after. Actually, they called Soccer Town USA, and that's where the Hall of Fame used to be at.
Yeah.
And then, of course, St. Louis with just all the players and coaches in its history. And then And then, of course, Kansas City and now Atlanta is trying to, get the National Training Center so that things constantly pivoting. I can say, just to be safe, that St. Louis was definitely the first number one, not to, tarnish Oneonta at all, because they have a great history of soccer in that town. But so many great players and coaches and friends have come out of St. Louis and continue to produce players. I mean, Danny Donegan played for me, and obviously, he coached for St. Louis for years. And, Daryl came out and played for me. He's the only guy that played a whole season with 2 broken big toes. Don't know how he did it.
I think he had broken toes since the time he was 7.
Oh, okay.
So.
And Mark Frederickson, God bless him. And just got so many great memories of teammates, and players that I've coached that have come out of St. Louis.
So let's shift gears a little bit, because there's the other sport that you've been heavily involved in from the top down, and you alluded to it a little while ago when we were talking about the futsal league, is futsal itself. Talk a little bit about your maybe introduction or engagement with futsal, as a transition, or maybe in addition to your indoor soccer career. Why futsal, and when did that come to fruition for you?
Yeah, John Kowalski was my coach. He was the assistant with the Cincinnati Kids my first year. He was the head coach of Hartford, which I actually remember. I went back to school and couldn't find a team, and I went to Hartford for an open tryout, and I got a contract, and then he became the coach because Hank Leotard and Vogelsinger had left. He had become the coach of the 5-a-side team. It wasn't even called futsal, and that was like in '86, and there was an official tournament, FIFA tournament in Budapest, Hungary. And he had asked me, hey, do you want to come and try out? And I said, hey, take Zoran Savic, who was playing. I was a player coach at the time. Zoran with Sporting KC, Jimmy Cabrera, Chris Hellekamp, AJ Lakowicki. I said, put us all in one line. We'll come to New York. We went to New York, and he said, I'll take you guys right away. Next thing you know, I'm in Budapest playing 5-a-side against Brazil and Mexico and Italy and Holland, whoever. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. Because you got to remember, I'm a goal scorer. When I turned pro, they moved me to the back because most of the players were foreign players. And They said, hey, go play defense. So indoor soccer to me was great because, I could still score from the back. And then all of a sudden there was futsal, and it's like, I'm even closer to the goal. And we did pretty good. And then years later, John continued to be the national team coach. Now he's coaching in Major League Soccer. The first qualifier is coming up, and he can't make it the full time in Guatemala for those. He asked me, hey, can you go coach the team?
Yeah.
I said, sure. So here I got Mark Mosier, I got Otto Orff, I got, Jimmy Cabrera, and the list goes on with those guys. And we go down, we win the gold medal.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, one thing we haven't clarified for the listeners, the team we're talking about is the U.S. National Men's Futsal Team. So not just a traveling money tournament group of buddies that are drinking beer, in the hotel room.
Well, they were, but yeah.
Yeah, well, that's another episode. We'll get to that in another episode. I want to get your take, just kind of maybe like a philosophical take on futsal, because as you were introduced to it, you mentioned going to Europe, and you're playing Brazil, and you're playing the Netherlands, and you're talking about countries and communities and cultures that really brought us the game as we know it. Futsal is extremely popular, in Brazil, in Argentina, and Spain in particular, those nations. When you first saw it and you saw how they played it, was there like a kind of an aha moment, or, maybe, here's some of the secret sauce that is equating to their 11v11 successes? Or was it just kind of like, wow, this is fun, this is fast, and I'm closer to the goal?
No, remember, I said that my college education was extremely important to me because I knew I couldn't play my whole life. I needed to figure out, I didn't think I'd become a coach, but how could I be into the business world and everything? And where do you learn indoor soccer from? Right. As a coach, there's no book. right? I think there's only one book written by Klaus de Boer. There's no videos really, obviously there's some on YouTube, but when I traveled the world as a player on the national team and then as the head coach for 20 years, I spent time with every coach from every country and did this. Why do you do that? So now all of a sudden I'm in Milwaukee and I'm learning futsal and different methodology. So in my head, JB, I'm thinking I need to do a hybrid. How can I take the methodology of indoor, which is just transforming, and the methodology of futsal, which is just beginning, and make a hybrid? Well, I need some futsal players. So I brought in 4 or 5 Brazilian players to help me with that growth. And next thing you know, instead of running straight, we're running diagonal, and we're doing V runs, and we're splitting walls, and we're doing all these different things. And spring forward, because it's a long story, we started winning championships after championship after championship. And I really base it on 100% on the players that were here, and also our system of play. Remember I said culture, right? I needed to do a culture shift. I needed to create a system. And we created a system and found out that futsal was a really big part of it. Now, JP and Shep and I take over indoor. We really feel that indoor soccer lost itself in the conversation of soccer and futsal as a developmental tool as well as a great sport on its own. So one of the first things that we decided when we took over the Major Arena Soccer League is we need to get indoor soccer back into the conversation of soccer here in North America. Christian Pulisic grew up in indoor with the Harrisburg Heat and the Detroit Ignition with his father, and look what happened to him, and he's one of the most technical players we had. So futsal really became my education. As far as learning more about the game of indoor.
Do you think that from a developmental standpoint, if we zoom out and look at U.S. soccer from a distance, and instead of it being a singular pyramid, we know that it's a whole bunch of silos. Where do you think futsal would be able to maybe assist the system, because it's we having kids in the MLS academies now and going around and traveling and seeing these incredible teams from all over the country. When we look into these teams, there's a large futsal presence in the development of a lot of these kids that are excelling at the 11 and V11 side. Do you think U.S. soccer and clubs across the country, youth clubs, do you think they're missing the boat by not integrating futsal more, whether it be regional, local, or maybe national organizations?
Well, I've been selling this vacuum cleaner for about 45 years called futsal and indoor soccer. I don't know why U.S. soccer hasn't embraced it. I mean, years ago, they said, let's do small-sided games. So they said, okay, 11v11 in a certain age, then 7v7, then 6v6. And then when it got to 5v5, they couldn't say futsal. They said 5v5. They haven't really embraced it because I think a lot up until recently, a lot of the technical directors and directors of coaching clubs around the country are men and women my age who don't know futsal, who don't know how to coach futsal. And when you don't know and you can't teach it, you don't believe in it. If you don't believe it, you don't sell it. But now there's a new generation of people in futsal. Look at it quickly. I go to Spain. I'm at La Rosa because I'm a FIFA instructor. Spain years ago said that futsal would be part of their player youth development. They have it at their national training center. I go to Clairefontaine. I'm in France, right? Just recently won a world championship outdoor. Mm-hmm. They were in the finals in futsal recently at the World Cup. You go to Clairefontaine, and you know what they have there at the National Training Center? Futsal. Yeah. I'm in AFA. I'm in Buenos Aires in Argentina. You know what they have? Futsal. I'm in Portugal at their training center. Do you know what they have? They have futsal. Well, if 10 out of the top 12 to 15 countries in the world embrace futsal as a youth developer at the same time its own sport on its own, what do we have to lose? I've been telling people, if you take the game and take it to the inner city, because remember, after the 94 World Cup, the mantra was take outdoor soccer, take it to the inner city, and the U.S. Soccer Foundation was going to spearhead that. They found out that you can't find big fields. You're not going to find 22 players, too expensive, and all these other reasons. So they started building mini pitches, right? Which is great. Kids are playing. So I really think if you could take this sport, I had a kid, I'm the technical director for U.S. Youth Futsal. I had a kid, Victor Jeramel, play for me for 5 or 6 years in the team, most recently in Paris last December. I called Mike Noonan, who played for me in Louisville, who's the head coach at Clemson University, just won the national champion. I said, Mike, I got this kid. He's a futsal player. He's an outdoor player. He's Gatorade Player of the Year outdoor for Kansas. You got to take a look at this kid. By the way, you know where he's playing right now? Clemson.
Don't. Yeah.
Clemson University. So he's playing on that team. And then you take a look at Jaden Shaw. I saw Jaden at 8 years old in Dallas playing on a futsal court and knew right away she had special ability. And Corbin scored a goal at the gold medal game. Jaden's one of the top forwards with the national team. They're futsal players. So I really think that if U.S. Soccer, we really want to get to the next level, both the men and women, they have to embrace not only futsal, but indoor soccer, because indoor soccer coached the correct way can develop special players.
Well, and I want to pick up on something that you alluded to, because I've thought about this too, theoretically, when you do look at the post 94 World Cup and the intention, because I remember too, reading those articles where, okay, we're going to move this game into the inner cities, because there's been this consummate debate, which I think is kind of a dumb debate about we don't get the best athletes. They're different. They're, basketball players, football players, they're just different athletes than soccer players. Case in point, Lionel Messi, right? But, trying to find the fields, to your point, well, you're not going to drop 1 or 2 new soccer fields in the middle of Lincoln Park in Chicago. And, because the real estate alone is going to be, unachievable. But every single one of these neighborhoods across every urban landscape has boys and girls clubs, has YMCAs that have the basketball courts or the racquetball. It doesn't matter. They have courts. Just throw two goals in there and buy a handful of futsal balls.
Yeah, and don't forget elementary, junior high school.
Yeah, everywhere.
Parking lots. I drive around and I see so many of these strip malls that are shut down and closed, and they all have cement floors. By the way, we take young players. We have youth national teams with U.S. Youth Futsal. We take them to Buenos Aires. You know where we're training? We're training at futsal facilities underneath the highway on concrete. And if you can learn how to defend on concrete, you can learn how to defend in anywhere in the world. So I think France has changed their demographic of players, both on their outdoor team and on their futsal teams. You've got other countries that have changed their demographics through the game of futsal. You have teams like you have in St. Louis Ambush. They have national team players for futsal. You have Brazilian players and other players from around the world that are playing on the Ambush that are now inwoven in your community, that are teaching futsal. I just think if U.S. Soccer dumped millions of dollars and said, we will build it, you come and put it in the inner cities in New York, in Detroit, in Dallas, in Chicago, in St. Louis, in Milwaukee, you would find a different demographic of player, and you would then give great opportunity for young people to maybe go a different pathway, both boys and girls.
Yeah, I agree. Because at the end of the day, the saying is the same in so much that, within the club community and the academies, everybody's wondering, how does my kid get to the next level? Well, if the kid's good enough, the coaches are going to find them. They're going to move up. The same thing will happen if you grow a futsal community. If you get little ballers out there that can play, they're going to be found. They're going to be moved to the outdoor, case in point, the kid that went to Clemson. I mean, that's a phenomenal story. Let me shift up a little bit. And before we get into MASL and get into what's going on in the league now, I want to talk a little bit of a transition or maybe a conduit sport. And that is more of an event, that being the TST. Last year was the first year. You know it, our listeners know it. It's $7v7 $1 million, winner winner takes all, big check, and everybody cuts it up, however they want to do it. The soccer community and really the TST organizers, the ones that we've spoke to, they are absolutely blown away at how well it was received. And when I probably personally watched, 10, 12 games year one, more this year. There's just something about it that is this perfect blend of indoor and futsal and 11v11, and it's exciting. I just want to get your take on it because inevitably you knew about it coming down the pipe. You know a lot of the players that are playing in it, not only from your own league, but you were alluding to some of the futsal players and obviously the big names that have come from 11v11. Where do you think TST falls in the relationship between futsal, between MISL and soccer?
Yeah, you said how great it was received, how great it was run. Okay, and I have to go back to Chris Paul, and I have to go back to the management of that organization.
Yep, absolutely.
I think had a vision, had a plan, created a culture, had a system, and they kind of just hit the sweet spot, right? 300 yards down the middle of the fairway. I think it was great. We had over 100 of our players from the Major Arena Soccer League, as well as coaches involved in that tournament the last 2 years. First year was an indoor team that actually had won it. I think it just blends everything together. Like you said, it has the look of an outdoor field. It's smaller, so you got more action. The people are close. They had names, right? Big time names. Pat McAfee and
Ocho Cinco.
Yeah, I mean, it was like Nani. They hit a sweet spot. And you know what? It wasn't 6 month season. Right. Everything's about, 30 seconds phone stuff. It was like bang, 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 bang. I think one thing I'd like to see changed is the goalkeeper rule, because I think the ball goes back too much to the goalkeeper. I think if they took our indoor rule, where if the keeper has the ball in his hand, it doesn't count as a possession, so he can get it back. I think it went back too much. But other than that, I think it was fantastic. I commend them. I congratulate them for all of our players. And it was great, JB, because so many people like Pat on ESPN talked about the level of play of the guys that play in indoor soccer. He's like, I never knew that these guys were such great, players. And that's to me, and I've said this for God knows how many years. Because some people say, well, you can be a great outdoor player and not a good indoor, not a great indoor player, and vice versa. To me, my answer is, if you're a good soccer player, okay, and you understand soccer and you got physicality, I don't care if you're playing 7-a-side, 11-a-side, beach, futsal, indoor. If you're a good player, Messi, he can play whatever he wanted to play, and he'd be a great player.
Yeah,
it was great.
And furthermore, if Pat McAfee can drop a cross on the dime as an assist, in their first game, anything is possible, right? No, I remember year one because the Newtown team was littered with a handful of St. Louis players. Paolo in particular in goal, just an absolute special human being, let alone soccer player, futsal player.
And a football player from Brazil. So there he is in St. Louis. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, he's now part of the fabric. Like, St. Louis is, we were talking about it earlier, kind of our lineage and the names and everybody that have done what they've done. Paolo's one that is like an adopted son, because not only is the goalie for the indoor team, but he's also one of the goalie trainers over at St. Louis, Scott Gallagher, which he's employed by Petch. So, it's all small world. Let's talk about MASL. We're about to kick off the new season. I think Ambush's first game is Black Friday. So literally right around the corner. It seemed, and we, in full transparency, we're partnering with the team over there, and we're helping to promote the games and talk about it on shows like this. But just in reading the tea leaves a little bit, because my algorithm, my socials, Twitter and Insta and everything is filled with soccer. I'm seeing more MASL coverage, not just Ambush, but from other teams. give us a state of the union as the leader of the pack here. Give us a quick state of the union of the league and kind of what you're expecting or what you're viewing, with the season opening coming up in a little more than 30 days.
Well, JP and Shep and I have been friends for 4 years, and we came back to the game because we love the game. We came back to the game because of what it did for us, both business-wise and also in our personal lives. It's been a big part of who we are. So it was great to come back. When we sat down and, I think it was Shep's idea, why don't we all go to the commissioner's job together, which has never been done before, and then cut the bucket up. JP became president of media for obvious reason. Shep became chairman. I maybe got the long end of the stick of becoming the commissioner with the soccer side. But we said, let's take A to Z and let's try to improve 25% for the first 3 years. Let's try to get to 75 to 80 to 100% after year 3. I'll go back to it. We needed to change the culture. I'll go back to it. We needed to create a system. I'll go back to it. We needed to change some of the things that we felt that needed to be changed in order to sell it. When we first took over, there were people that said, okay, we're going to be on ABC or CBS next week. It's like, guys, that's not how it's going to work.
Right. So
now after year 3, our last 8 or 9 games were on Golasso, and Golasso loved us, There will be an announcement coming up of what we're going to be doing going, but it's going to be great news. So there were so many things. We changed some laws of the game. We are changing a few more to make the game quicker and faster and easy to manage. We're setting more standards in order. So I think the state of the union right now, we felt that it would be a 3-year cultural shift. It's maybe more of a 4 and 5, but we're getting so much closer. We did just sign new contracts, Shep, JP, and I, to take us to that time. Again, early on in the show, we need one big player to go along with the other owners that we had to take us over the top. And I think all the things that we're doing in order to give it a bigger more eyeballs on the game. I mean, we went to United Soccer Coaches. Indoor hadn't been there for years. We brought the college draft back, which has been great for indoor soccer. We started a player combine, which is our 3rd coming up in San Diego. We're going to be adding an all-star game. We constantly are adding to what this league used to be, get back to it, but then take it to another level. So really, the state of the union is, I think we're at a great spot. We're very excited. Our schedule came out yesterday and today, and we got 12 teams, and we'll fight for 24, 25 MISL championship.
So where do you guys come into play on the because what you're describing is really, that's the nuts and bolts in my view of player development, player contracts, kind of the corporate / athletic requirements to have a good product on the field, benches with happy players, and so that you have a product, right? Where do you guys come into play, or do you have maybe a strategy or some vision when it comes to fan experience? Because that's the other part of the equation. Here in St. Louis, we're spoiled with City Park and the new and the new St. Louis City SC. The way that team has approached the fan experience, from the app to the lighting to the whole 9 yards, and I'm a soccer nerd, right? I live it, but so many people that are not soccer people go there and they're like, holy shit, this has just been an incredible experience. What are you viewing, or what are you guys strategizing to maybe pay attention to that side of it too? Because in TST, we saw an incredible fan experience that was largely digital, via, Twitter, Instagram, everything else. MASL, yes, you got each individual markets, but where's the league coming into play to, maybe put that much attention into the fan as you are with the player development as well?
Yeah, that's great. The first thing that we needed to do was clean up the league website and all the other websites in the league. Obviously, social media and websites are really what eyeballs go to. We brought in Twitch for a couple of years to bring different eyeballs to the sport. We'll be rolling out some apps, as you talked about, fantasy apps. I don't want to, plant the seed and then throw it out there real quick, but there'll be some apps that will be coming out shortly for indoor soccer, which the fan is going to be able to sit there and interact similar to what they do in baseball and the other sports. We have some exciting news coming up also about where you're going to be able to find our games, not only at a major park, but also in different areas. And again, on your phone. We have betting now that's come to the game, which obviously, is
huge.
big amongst all the other sports. So slowly but surely, I mean, you can't really turn this ship around, all in one day. It took a couple of years, but we're doing that. And then you can look at, at the ambush. Shelly, one of the few women who are professional owners in sports. She's done an amazing job with her partner, Jeff Locker. They have a lot of great things inside the family arena where, the fans can interact. The players are probably the big key too, JB, is that guys like Paulo and the rest of the guys, they sign autographs. They talk to the fans. They're inwoven in the community, kind of like what Slobo and Daryl and David Bursick and Petch and all the rest of the guys were back in the 80s. So if you take all those things and put them all together, I think the snowball is beginning to get bigger and bigger and bigger and will continue to grow.
Yeah, we were always chasing down Redmond Lane because we couldn't believe there was an Irishman running around, So there's another throwback name there, right?
Yeah, that was a throwback name, yeah.
So let me ask you this specifically from a player perspective. MLS, from the early years, starting with Beckham, they really chased down that marquee player. And I had a friend the other day, we were talking about it, and David Beckham, the joke was, well, he had played his 18, he was walking back to the clubhouse. And it seems as if we might have grabbed Messi closer to the 15th, 16th, 17th hole, TBD, right? He's pretty special. But those names inject such massive attention into the MLS markets. MASL, do you look at names like that? Maybe, not necessarily like a Savannah Banana shtick thing, but looking at what TST did and then looking at how MLS is really relying upon those macro names, are you looking at a player in the same way as opposed to a player from like an investor standpoint?
No, that's a great point, actually, and a great question. Let's kick back to the NASL first. Pele was the guy that came, right? So that was early NASL.
Correct.
Right? They played in smaller stadiums. They didn't play in soccer-specific stadiums. Pele was the one that was that first part. You go to Beckham. He was the second phase of Major League Soccer, right? They're starting to build stadiums. They're starting to do this. What's the third phase of that? Is Messi. So he brought the best player in the world. And by the way, Major League Soccer in the United States and North America was ready for Messi. I don't know if Messi was ready or the United States was ready 20 years ago. I mean, you think from Pele to Beckham to Messi is brilliant, right? We had the Steve Zungel, we had the Sagotas, we had the Shep Messings. Now you got the Empire Strikers, Jeff Byrne, the owner, brought in Marco Fabian. He was the leading goal scorer of the league, co-leading goal scorer, and he did fabulous. We think that Marco is the start of something new for indoor soccer. We do have an issue with visas in the league. If we can get P1 visas much earlier, but to go back to your comment, to go with Marco and this other thing, is TST opened the eyes of other players. And I'll tell you who. Ricardinho, who was considered the top player for futsal. He was 5 or 6 time FIFA Player of the Year for futsal for Portugal. I've talked to him. We've had some teams talk to him. You've had players from Spain that have been big name players from the national team. Because of my footprint and Sheps and JP, more players and coaches around the world are looking at the Major Arena Soccer League as, hey, I can go coach there. Hey, I can go play there. Again, everything starts at the top with money. Yep. We can get that, a big time owner who's someone who really wants to spend money. I think Marco, he proven not only to be a great player in the game, but what a great player off the field. He's done so much. I think he's the start of what Pele to Beckham to Messi Hopefully we beat Marco. Landon, had played, a couple of years ago in the Soccers. I really think we got some marquee players coming to our league in the very near future.
Let me ask you kind of a fun question, because it occurred to me earlier today in thinking about our conversation, along the lines of this, talking about the popularity and the ebbs and the flows of indoor in particular. The outdoor game has kind of been on a pretty steady trajectory. The graph is more a straight line. But one thing stood out to me, and this is more of a pop culture aha moment, because in regards to MLS, and so many new fans, and a lot of new fans that are in the media side of it, whether it's podcasts or whatever they're doing, or they're just in a Facebook group and they want to talk about XG all day. One thing that I've realized in talking to some of these quote new fans, you have a large percentage of these individuals that never played the game, that didn't learn the game from the backyard and maybe watching Soccer Made in Germany, or the younger ones that were privileged to have EPL on every weekend. But they learned the game through a video game, FIFA. Indoor has never really had a video game. And I'm thinking to myself, Grand Theft Auto and all these crazy games, what sporting game? Because NHL 2K or whatever it is now did brilliantly. I'm giving you a freebie idea here. An EA video game of indoor soccer, there's your next generation of fans. Why is why has that never happened?
Again, it comes down to it comes down to money. I'm hoping that Jim is listening to this, so we can get Kavanaugh's passion for the game. And obviously he was an outdoor player, but he played indoor. And maybe get Jim to get involved and create this game. But I love it. And again, everything's wrapped around these phones. And my son just bought the new Medic thing. He said, "Dad, you wouldn't believe it. You're actually on the sidelines." He said, "I watched Argentina play somebody, and the guy ran right past me." So I love your idea. We do have apps that are going to be coming out, but I will throw that up on the whiteboard.
Well, I tell you what, if I see it pop up, I have recorded proof.
Yes, you have.
2 points. That's all I want. 2 points. I'm a little guy. So let's talk about just kind of big picture then. Instead of getting in the weeds of MASL or TST and all this interwoven, strategy, let's just talk about soccer in general. U.S. soccer. Excuse me. Pochettino's in camp with his first run at the quote greatest generation that technically hasn't won anything anytime recently. As you zoom out and you look at U.S. soccer and you look at the Pulisic's of the world and you look at just really that whole roster with 99% of them playing in Europe, the growth of MLS, the return growth of MASL, the new growth of TST. But when you look at soccer in America, grade it. You're a chairman. You got one of those titles for a league. You have the right to put a grade on U.S. soccer as a whole.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they're totally open-ended because because if you listen to the parents that are paying all these team fees and everything else, they all think it's all crap. And if you go on Twitter, College Soccer Truth and Tactical Manager and all these guys with a tremendous amount of opinions and probably not a lot of minutes on the field, they all think everything is in the shitter. Where do you see soccer in America today?
Well, if we talk about the women's game first, the women's game is fantastic. There are other countries around the world actually caught up to the United States as far as the physicality. I mean, Title IX was extremely important to women's sports in our country. Women play more than one sport. I think that was our advantage, the physicality of our team, as well as being very good, intelligent soccer players. But I think U.S. Soccer did a really great job of still staying ahead of it, and of course, winning the gold medal. I think she's done a wonderful job with that team. So I think the women's game is great. As far as the men's team, I think there's still a disconnect somewhere. I'm not quite sure where that's at. I don't know if it's a hunger that needs to be there, where the player in the past had a different attitude.
Yeah.
I got to be careful what words I'm going to say. A grit, a toughness, would claw and fight and gnaw. And sometimes I don't see that in some players on the men's side. I'm hoping that the new coach now can bring some of that out, because I think that is the fuel that gets players over the hump. I think cultural shift. And of course, it's kind of like winning cures everything, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
we can just win something. I think that's going to help and give everybody confidence. I think we're there. I mean, we're producing players. Futsal is becoming a bigger part. Indoor soccer is becoming a bigger part. I think we're there. I think his first 6 months are going to be crucial. I think whenever you make a coach's change, I think the first 2, 3, 4 games are really, really crucial. I remember at the beginning of the show, I went to LA. They never won more than 8 games. And I gave them 30 days and said, hey, you got to prove to each other, not me.
Yep.
You got to prove to each other that you're going to be here. I think the first part of his journey is going to be really interesting. Across the board, social media, the fans, the player, his coaching staff, U.S. Soccer, and all the experts. So,
well, I tell you what, their first game, they have a 12th man at their advantage to play in Panama, but they are privileged enough to have that game right here in St. Louis City Park. And so, if you should make a road trip, come on down. We'll buy Budweiser, get the old gang together, and we'll watch Pochettino and the next generation of U.S. players. Huh? I
will be coming to St. Louis. I don't know if it's going to be for that game, but I will definitely all get together when I come.
You open the door, and I'm going to ask you one last question before I let you go. You were talking about the success of the women's side, the women's national team, and just women's soccer in general. There's a very short list of opportunities for women to play professionally in America and really even abroad. The NWSL is in its infancy stage just facts of fact. What about indoor? Have you guys ever thought about that? Because the player pool is there and their options aren't there. And I get it. I know that it takes money and those are payrolls and it requires new owners or maybe owners to cut bigger checks. But it seems to me as if there's a growth market available right in front of our faces.
So you want 2 points in this one too?
That one I'll only take one, because if you can pull that one off, I think that does better than the video game.
Okay. So as you know, there's been an alphabet bowl of different indoor names as well as outdoor names throughout our country and our history. So there was a group called the PASL, Premier Arena Soccer League, that had pretty much an M3 level and a women's level, amateur. We felt that we needed to put our arms around everybody involved in indoor soccer and make them feel like they're part of the solution and not part of the problem. So the PASL and the MASL just recently announced that they have affiliated underneath our brand now. So we have M1, we have M2, we have M3, and we have MW. So now we do have an amateur league. Not to let the cat out of the bag, there are conversations right now, and St. Louis is one of them, is to then start a exhibition series, kind of like a TST, of women indoor soccer, and St. Louis could be one of those teams that would do it this season to kick it off. But we now have an MW, so we're giving now women the opportunity. I believe we have 16 to 18 teams already involved in that. JB, can you imagine from M1 to MW, we have over 80 now indoor teams in our tier, in our pyramid, just for the game of indoor soccer. And the women's game, actually, Michelle Akers reached out to me after she heard that we did MW, and she would like to get involved in the game somehow. But it's coming, and I think it's coming sooner than later. So now you got 2 points with the video game and 1 point with the women's league.
I'm killing it. Let's go another 30 minutes here, and I'm going to be catching up with Kavanaugh. Well, maybe not Jim, but Well, hey, Keith, this has been a blast, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. Soccer in St. Louis it's up there. It's right there with Cardinals and Budweiser and Provel cheese.
Oh, yeah.
And, so when we get to talk about it and get the perspective from outside of market with, obviously the stories and the experience that you have as well, we love it. We eat it up. So thank you very much for your time.
Can I plug one thing before we go?
Yeah.
One of the things that we decided that when we took over is that we have a responsibility as a league office to help teams find players. We feel that we needed to start a player combine. Our first one was in Dallas, Texas. Our second one was in Utica. Our third now is going to be in San Diego, October 26th to the 29th. You still can register at MISL.com. JB, what's so cool about this is that, when you go trial for the ambush in an open trial, invitational trial, which is great, you're trying out for one team. If you don't make it, you really don't go on the circuit, right? Because the other teams here, okay, you didn't make it, one team. Here you have the ability to be in front of all 12 teams at the same time. And by the way, it used to be the Budweiser Fest in the MISL, right? We did the same thing. We brought all the best college players together and we built Northwest, South, and East, and they play. We've done the same thing. So you can come to San Diego. We've added something. Capelli will give a personal service contract to the #1 draft pick. On Sunday, there will be a training session for each team in the morning. There'll be games in the afternoon on Sunday, the 29th. And then the coaches will pick the best American player and the best Mexican player. And those two players will play on Team USA and Team Mexico in that game that evening. So that's an added bonus to the combine.
That's brilliant.
Then they have games on Monday, game on Tuesday morning, and actually get drafted right there. So we've had some great players. O'Keefe just signed a 3-year deal. He came out of the combine last year with Dallas. There's more players going to be coming out this year. But if you want to become a professional indoor soccer, go to MASLsoccer.com, October 26th to the 29th in San Diego.
Well, I love it. I tell you what, do me a favor when we get off the line here, make sure you just shoot me a link and I'll include it in all of our liner notes for those of you that are listening. If you're driving and you didn't write that down, don't worry about it. Go into the episode notes. You're going to see the link right there. It's that time. I'm going to let you go because you got a life to live up there.
I got one favor, though.
Yeah, what's that?
When I come and you and I sit and we have a beer or whatever, and we watch an ambush game or an outdoor game, we go to Charlie Guido's after so I can have some great Italian food in St. Louis.
Charlie Guido's it is. That'll be our treat. You can entertain us at the game. That's your world. I'll entertain you down on the hill. We'll make it happen. Keith Tozer, Chairman, MASL, lifelong supporter, fan, lover of the game. I appreciate all your time, man. And we will catch up with you in the future.
Appreciate it.